because and I'm doing this on YouTube now because I thought, you know what? I have a lot of followers on Facebook that are not on Instagram, and a lot of people on Instagram that are not on Facebook, but everyone has access to YouTube, so here we are. If you are tuning in, I welcome you. I have 3 questions that were submitted for this month's August. I can't believe it's already August. This month's live Q&A. So let's just dive in. The first question was about jade plants, or Crassula ovata. I love that Latin name. I think it's just, it rolls off the tongue. The question was about their jade plant drooping and hanging over the edge of the pot. This person was worried that that was going to do harm or damage to the plant and wants to know if they should do any kind of support or what they should do, if that was even normal. So jade plants are a type of succulent, and they can get a little leggy in our homes, especially with lower light environments, and that is completely natural. And a lot of this has to do with genetics. Some jade cultivars are more upright and more stout than others. Some of them do kind of have a bit of a trailing habit, but it happens more so in jade plants that are living indoors, especially in a little bit lower light conditions. So to prevent your jade from trailing, you can always intensify the light that is directly coming down on your jade plant. But I will say I've seen my fair share of trailing jades, like grown in hanging baskets up in low light environments, up in ceilings, and they can be quite lovely. It's just important to remember that parts of the vine can break off over time if they get old and brittle, those stems. It's natural for succulents to lose some of their foliage, some of their growth onto the ground below them to asexually propagate. That's just the succulent way. So it's not really per se going to do any harm to your plant that it is drooping or trailing out of its pot like that. But you can always trim it if it's bothering you, if that trailing part is bothering you. They're really easy to propagate by stem cutting or by leaf cutting and just rooting them straight into moist potting mix. But yeah, it is kind of normal. That was a roundabout way to say it is normal for jades to somewhat trail out of their pots if they're growing indoors. I regularly go through and give mine a haircut and propagate a bunch of jade cuttings and move them into my greenhouse for propagation to sell on the plant bus. So, all right, jade plants. Yeah, don't worry. It's okay. We kind of cradle our plants a little bit too much, and they can take it. They're tough. All right, so if anyone has questions as I'm doing this live, the point of doing these videos live is so that you can interact with me in person a little bit. I guess not technically in person, but over video, real time, and ask me questions, pick my brain a little bit. All right, the second question that was submitted ahead of time is, should I stake my Ecuadorian peperomia? It's bending kind of crazy. So it's kind of funny that I had 2 staking questions or 2 support related questions in the same month. Thankfully, no fungus gnat questions. But the Ecuadorian peperomias, if you've seen these before, I had some on the bus this summer and they're really wacky and cool. The stems kind of look like Twizzlers, like red licorice. They are really very, very succulent, juicy looking plants. And they do the little diva plant drooping habit if they get a little bit dry. And if you've noticed your plants start to bend one direction, it can be that it's getting a little weighted, a little top heavy, or simply that it's bending towards the light. So 2 things. 1, make sure you're rotating that plant if you're noticing that is happening with the bending towards the light. It's actually a hormonal reaction in the stem because auxin is a hormone in plants that is light triggered, and more auxin stimulates cell elongation on the back half of the stem that is not exposed to light, and so it causes that plant to bend toward the light. It's a whole sciencey thing, but let's not nerd out right now. So if you ever feel like your plant is uncomfortable to you, where it is starting to tip and you feel that it needs support, you are always welcome to add support. It's not like it's not going to harm your plant to give it support if you feel that it needs support. The Ecuadorian peperomia is not a vining plant, so it's not like going to adhere itself to a stake. So in this case, that's kind of a good thing, because you can stick in like a chopstick or a dowel rod or any kind of supportive stake that you want to in the plant. You can always swap it out and replace it if it's wooden and it starts to rot. You can always swap it out. It's not like philodendrons that they root themselves straight into the moss pole, and then it makes it impossible to remove that moss pole later. If that stake rots in the pot. So moss poles, I always recommend when you're using those to support your plants that they are like PVC, so that they don't actually break off in the pot over time. But with this peperomia, you're welcome to throw in any kind of wooden stake or PVC or metal, whatever you want to use, because you can replace it. There's no sweat there. So pull those chopsticks out of the drawer and support that plant if you feel that it's needed. Okay, so we've talked jade plant. We've talked Ecuadorian peperomia, Ecuadorian watermelon peperomia. I should be saying its full lengthy name. Let's see. How to stop leaf. Okay, the third and last questions that was submitted earlier was how to stop leaf tips from turning crispy, from browning off on spathiphyllum, which is peace lily, and calathea, or the rattlesnake plant. So both of those plants are notorious for getting crispy leaf margins. With both, I mean, the rattlesnake plant could be a little bit different, but one of the main reasons that plants, especially house plants, get leaf margin crispiness, leaf edge crispiness, is because you're letting it dry out periodically and frequently in between watering. And spathiphyllum, or peace lily, is known for being a dramatic plant and wilting way down and telling you when it needs water. And so most home growers use that as a sign and allow it to wilt every single time between watering. And while it is going to keep your plant alive, it's not going to keep it from being crispy. So if you allow it to wilt every time between watering, it will eventually start to crisp up on the leaf edges, because the leaf edges on plants is the last place water is translocated or moved in a plant. It's the edge of the world, the edge of existence in the plant. And so those are also the first places where water or drought stress is going to start to take effect. So if you want to prevent the leaf crispiness on your peace lilies and other plants that do the dramatic wilting, make sure that you are religiously doing your weekly watering checks. And with peace lilies, yes, you want them to dry out, but you don't want them to be dry for like 1 to 2 days before you give them water. So just make sure you're being on top of your watering routine. I know that's easier said than done for people who live real lives, but do the best you can and in order to prevent that leaf tip crispiness. Now, the same thing goes for calatheas or rattlesnake plants. The same kind of concept applies, but there's also other issues with calathea, as any plant person will tell you. Prayer plants, calatheas, anything in that arrowhead vine, or I'm forgetting that common name for that family, the Marantaceae family, any plant in there loves humidity and is a little bit more sensitive to like fertilizer, salts, and anything excess in your water, like a lot of chlorine, for example. So making sure that your water is clean and good, and making sure you're watering those plants on routine, not letting them stay dry too long, letting them dry out, not to bone dry, but just dry enough that you can add water in and not cause a saturated, soggy mess of a plant. Those two things, and then also making sure your environment is not super dry around that plant. So make sure it's not by vents or doors that are open and closed in the winter where they're getting that cold, hot rush of air, that temperature change. Try to keep it maybe around other plants to create a bit of a microclimate, a bit of a bubble around that plant to increase the humidity. I actually don't sell calatheas in my plant shop because they're beautiful and most people can't resist them. And I want everybody to resist them because they're gorgeous, but only really intensive plant collectors. And a few percentage of people are really actually quite good at calatheas. Usually they look pretty crispy in most of our homes, if we're doing real life. So that's why calatheas. Also, they are a magnet to spider mites, and I just like to head that off and avoid that in greenhouse production if I can help it. If I can prevent magnet plants from being in my greenhouse for spider mites, then I can avoid spider mites. That's at least my logic. Okay, before I sign off, I wanted to show off my Monstera because I'm basic like that, and I wanted to show how big this leaf has gotten. It is definitely double the size of my head. I will pose with it. Let me move you over a little bit so you can see. It is huge. It is new, and I'm so excited. There are aerial roots coming out all over around this pot, and I wanted to talk about that. People have asked me in the past too, can I trim the air roots that are coming off my philodendrons, monsteras, anything in that family? And I really highly discourage trimming roots if you can help it, because those roots are actively growing. It's healthy growth. Why would you trim off healthy growth? It's just kind of the way these jungle plants are, and I always suggest learning to live with it, but you can also work on kind of slowly wrapping them in some of your larger pots, just to make sure you keep them a little contained, so you can vacuum around them and whatnot, whatever you need to do. But I let them loose. Try to avoid trimming. The other nice giant leaf that popped out of my plant in the last couple of weeks was on my money tree. This plant is now about 6 years old, and I featured it in a few of my YouTube videos in the past. And man, this thing, I added just 2 inches of fresh potting soil onto this pot after about 3 years of it just being in this 10-inch pot. And boy, this plant has really exploded. It is now just about as tall as me. I'll pose with my plant again. And it's on fire. It's doing great. One thing with money trees to remember, it is a little bit normal for you to see some lower leaf loss in the winter as that plant's a little bit low light stressed. As long as your plant's putting on new growth and not losing growth too rapidly, that's kind of the balance you want to look for. Obviously, in an ideal world, you don't lose any growth. Just make sure to help support all that new growth. You're fertilizing well, you're watering on routine, and that your temperature's staying pretty consistent if you can help it. Because, you know, a lot of our houseplants are tropical plants from parts of the world where they are not in want of water or nitrogen, like nutrients, and they're in consistent temperatures. They're not being moved around indoors and outdoors. So it always helps to think of a plant's native environment. So anyways, okay. I think that wraps up this video for this time. I am thinking in future, I might be making a place for everyone to submit their questions ahead of time, because that's kind of what this has turned into, a question submit, and then I answer them. So I think that's how we're going to do it in the future. I might not be doing these lives quite as much. I'm going to do some question and answer, but not live. So stay tuned for an update on where to submit questions. This was more of just a little experiment to try this on YouTube and see how it goes. So stay tuned. I promise I will stop shifting around all of my content here pretty soon. I'm just looking for the happy medium, the balance where everyone can benefit from plant care information from yours truly, and we'll see how it goes. So all you can do is trial and error. It's just like the horticulture world. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in, and I am going to sign out now.